Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OTA. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, and today we've got an OTA. This is a smaller one, only 5 cards, and I'm going to tell you right now, if the thumbnail doesn't, I'm not impressed. I think that this is almost entirely a miss. I think the majority of this OTA is stuff we didn't really want to see happen. We're going to kick it off by talking about Iron Patriot, who got the smallest possible nerf. He goes to giving a -3 cost from formerly giving a -4 cost if you win his location. He's still a 2/3. He still generates 4, 5, and 6 cost cards. He is still an S tier card. I think that this is still a top 3 card in the game. When we did the top 10 cards on the podcast last week, we had a Iron Patriot at number 1. I think this fairly firmly puts him behind the card Sam Wilson Captain America, and I think he's probably also now behind Galacta. I don't have any other cards in Marvel Snap that this is behind. I still think this is one of the best cards. I still think this is a snap condition. I still think this is incredibly strong. I think we're going to be back here in a month with another nerf to this card, as it remains in every freaking deck. I don't know. This one feels like a giant miss to me. I understand that they're trying not to kill the card. I understand that people paid money for it, but I think a 2/2 is the bare minimum. Even if it stayed at -4, a 2/2 is the bare minimum. It needs to be harder to win that location. As a 2/3, if you play that in a location where your opponent hasn't played anything, even playing another 3, right? Let's just say you play another 2/3 on top of him and nothing else. That's 6 power the opponent has to overcome on turn 3. That's a lot. That's just a lot. Overcoming 6 power on turn 3 is a lot, and generally speaking, they're going to play something with more than that 3 power there, right? And if they do play a 3 power, it's going to be Rocket and Groot, which is fundamentally playing a 5 power there. And now you have to overcome 8. So even Gladiator won't do it because Rocket and Groot will shoot that and it'll only be 7. That kind of thing is wildly, wildly, wildly strong. I think Iron Patriot is one of the best cards in the game, and I don't think that's changed. Here's an example of an Iron Patriot deck that I don't think changes at all. This is the number 1 deck. This was the deck we covered this morning in the video. Derek was number 1 for weeks with this deck, playing almost exclusively this. He took a little break for the hot location, has fallen a little bit, but this is the number 1 deck. Do you still run Iron Patriot in this? Yep. Are you still happy to frigga that Iron Patriot card? Most of the time. Uh, what about at the end of the game? Well, what this does is if you drew a 6 and now that costs 3, is it raises the value of a card not in this deck. It raises the value of Juggernaut. So that's a change, I guess, because now you'll be going 3+3, and Juggernaut's the highest value 3 you can play at the end. Raises the value of Sage. But hey, this deck runs Magic, so you can even still play it with Galacta, or if you play it with Luna, you've still got 9 power on that third turn. This one seems wild to me. Again, I don't think this is a change that is going to affect this deck in the slightest. I think the deck is very, very slightly worse. There is some percentage of games where not getting a free 4 or where that 6 costing 3 will matter, but most of the time, you're going to be totally fine. Most of the time, this is still a snap condition. Most of the time, this is still one of the best cards in Marvel Snap. Again, I fully expect in 2 to 4 weeks, once the dust settles on this change, for us to be completely back in the exact same spot with Iron Patriot. Next up, they finally changed Galacta to where she should have been all along. She goes from a 4/6 to a 4/5. This is still S tier, and this one means even less than Iron Patriot. Every single deck that still ran her still runs her. She is now technically less power than Gwenpool if you play them both on turn 4, but her targeted nature and that she's giving +3, not +2 to a card, still means that she spikes higher, and this is still going to be the premium card of choice. Kahori could potentially challenge this down the line. Kahori is a card coming next month. Make sure you check Saturday's video, where we're going to go over all the spotlights for the next month. But right now, this is still S tier. This is a hit in Agamotto decks in particular, where you would almost always images of Icon Galacta. That would get you to 18 power. 15 power is a lot less than 18, but 5 is only a little bit less than 6. This is kind of where the card should always have been. I still think this is the second best card in Marvel Snap. This is a good example of a deck that's not really affected. In this deck, actually, Iron Patriot is affected a little more because you really wanted that extra cheap card to be able to sneak in along the curve for the Surfer decks. This is a top 10 deck right now. We'll be covering this in tomorrow's top 10 decks video. Tomorrow we do the top 10 decks after the OTA. This deck's still going to be there. It's still absolutely incredible. Iron Patriot still fits in it. Galacta doesn't change at all. She's still the highest power thing. She's still giving you that 15 power brood. And on everything else, she's just a better surfer hit. As long as she's a better surfer hit, she's going to go in a ton of decks, whether she be a 4/5 or a 4/6. I could see her eventually being a 4/4, but honestly, as good as she is, I think we kind of just need more good 4 drops. And if we have more good 4 drops, she's a lot less impressive. But for the time being, she is the class of the 4 drops and thus one of the best cards in the game. Again, a massive amount of decks in Marvel Snap right now start by going, okay, I want this theme, and then I put Galacta, Iron Patriot, and Sam Wilson in the deck. That's still going to be the case. It's going to be we start with this theme, we put Galacta, Iron Patriot, and Sam Wilson in the deck. Also, Rocket and Groot. Rocket and Groot's going to be in all of these decks too. Rocket and Groot should probably be at 3/2 for many of the same reasons as these other cards are nerfed. Just a little bit needs to be taken off the top of these extremely, extremely powerful cards. Before we get to the next batch of cards, please hit that sub, like, and comment. We bring you at least 7 days a week of Marvel Snap videos. This week, well, today we're going to have 2 videos. Tomorrow, 2 videos. Saturday, 2 videos. We cover Marvel Snap extraordinarily thoroughly. If you want the most Marvel Snap coverage that hits everything in the game at an expert level, we get exclusive decks from top meta players. That last deck, no one else has. It's a top meta deck that no one else in Marvel Snap has. Hit that sub, hit that like, hit that comment. In addition, you can win an Agamotto by commenting on this video. All you have to do is leave a specific comment later in the video. As long as you're subbed, you're entered to win Agamotto. This is the last week we're giving away Agamotto. Next week, we're giving away five copies of Agent Carter, next month's season pass card. They changed Pixie, but it's not the change we wanted. They made Pixie a 2/2. This could not possibly mean less. I usually am much higher on 1 power nerfs and buffs than other people. I do think that percentage of games they win and lose matters. I don't really believe that for Pixie. Pixie is trying to win on high rolls. Pixie is trying to blow you out by her cards rolling so effectively. If she's a 1/1 or if she can't shuffle a card with itself, either one of those two are perfectly frickin' fine ways to make Pixie a real card. Making her a 2/2 is not one. Maybe a 2/4, but a 2/2, this is still an utterly garbage card. Sorry, Pixie. I really like the character. I really like the design. It just needs better tweaks. So this is a reasonably successful recent Pixie deck. Pixie is a card that is very often run with Mobius because Mobius says you get the better of the 2 costs because Pixie can shuffle a card up, right? If you get a 5 cost Nico Minoru but Mobius is on the board, you get it for 1. If you get a 1 cost Cersei and Mobius is on the board, you get it for 1. You get the better of the 2 costs. Pixie works as a reasonable backup plan for Wiccan for this reason, but it's not good. Like, it's just a thing you can do if you're looking for variety in your Marvel Snap. I like this deck, but Pixie's just not good enough. Sauron is a huge change. This is the biggest buff of the OTA by far. And there's only one more change. We're going to actually look at 2 decks for this one because I think this is finally a B tier card. Sauron contradicting with Starbrand was a real problem. You really would like to curve Sauron into Starbrand into like a Typhoid Mary, and at that point you're putting up well ahead of curve stats at every point on the curve, and things really work well. They didn't give him a lot of stats because he was previously an extremely high win rate card. They made him a 2/2. That's going to be low, and that's going to limit the upside a little bit. Even a 2/3 here is a lot of value. As we've discussed, being able to stop or match a Iron Patriot is very important. I do think this is going to put a new deck in the meta. I don't believe that deck is going to be tier 1. A new deck in the meta is a good thing inherently, right? Like, we're happy to have more decks. They did remove some decks recently with some nerfs, so being able to put a new deck back into the meta is a reasonably cool thing, even if this is only going to be a tier 2 deck. Let's take a look at some builds for Sauron. The first one is my first Starbrand deck. This is a Starbrand is Born. This was the one I released on day 1 for Starbrand. I did end up changing Cosmo for armor eventually, but otherwise the deck remained untouched. And this deck has a 58% win rate. I still was always successful with this deck when I played it too, so this is still a good deck, and now it just got better because it can play Sauron sooner. That's fundamentally it. If you can play Sauron sooner, the deck improves. You will play Sauron on 2 for this deck over Iron Patriot on 2, which is really saying something. However, you do keep Iron Patriot in the list because being able to go Iron Patriot into Starbrand is one of the shortest damn ways to win that card. Actually, maybe Cosmo doesn't become armor anymore. You just say, I'm going to eat the Shangs, and it becomes Juggernaut. That's probably better with Sauron as a 2-drop. But either way, Sauron is so much easier to fit into the curve now, and thus so much better. You can even on turn 4 do things like Sauron and Lizard, Sauron and Zero, and not feel bad and be able to get a lot of powerful plays out of it that way. I think that this is an absolutely incredible change, and I'm very for it. I'm excited to try this deck, even though if it's good, it's going to bore me a little bit. This isn't really my style. Then we have Sauron Try 2. This is a more mid-range low to the ground Sauron. We've seen a lot of these decks have success. They usually top out at Galacta. They run Galacta Enchanters and then only cheaper stuff. But if Sauron gets cheaper, I think we can afford Typhoid Mary. And that's basically what this is. It's saying I've got a bunch of extra power. I can Psylocke myself into a Galacta. You're not Psylocking into anything else, but you can Psylocke later in the game to get extra energy, to drop an Ebony Maw, to drop a Hydra Bob, so on and so forth. This one's pretty good. I don't think this is as good as the previous, but this has been relatively successful at high infinite versions of this. Again, I think this kind of deck is going to want, because of the Sauron change, more Typhoid Mary now, but I think that is ultimately worth it. It's also possible Psylocke should be Zabu, because turning these 4s into 3s is even better than Psylocking. But, like, yeah, and also that separates it from Sauron. So that should probably be Zabu, which is going to remove Hydra Bob for something a little higher up the curve. This deck will need some tweaking, but I think this is a good sample of where we can be in a low to mid-range deck that just puts up a lot of power. Hey, come check out a stream. I should be streaming uh tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be recording the Snap Judgments podcast. Stop by at twitch.tv/pulseglazer. All right, our season pass question is very simple. You want to win a season pass? Answer. What's your OTA review? How do you feel about this one? We've got one more card to talk about. It is Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider gets the Khonshu buff. It goes from a 4/4 to a 4/5. This doesn't change the card. It was a high C, low B, depending on your perspective. It's still exactly there. 4/5 is significantly better than 4/4. That is one of the breakpoints. 4/5 is much better than 4/4. 4/5 and 4/6 are relatively close. 4/7 is much better than 4/6. I don't know why. I think it's the overall math of adding up lanes, but that's just how it ends up working out. So thus Ghost Rider is really buffed. I don't think it buffs the Dex egos in enough though. The decks are still of a relatively similar power. Khonshu, Hela, and Black Knights get a touch better, but none are all that great. Hela could use the extra point. Like the Hela decks that run Ghost Rider get a point back of the 9 they lost. Probably not enough. Khonshu decks don't hate this though. We've been looking at multiple decks to put this in, and I do think Black Knight decks really like this, where they often are trying to hit this with Zabu, or they're trying to get this like as one part of their last turn play, and being able to go a little bit more over the top with Ghost Rider is pretty damn good. First, we got my Khonshu. I've been waiting to show this off because I've had a lot of success with it. This was my day one Khonshu deck. It's actually my before day one Khonshu deck. I think I made one change to this. I cut Scorn. No, I kept Scorn. I cut Nico for probably Ghost Rider, first Ghost Rider. But whatever. This is a fundamentally fantastic deck. It's basically a Goon Knight deck where we're gonna be discarding hopefully not Ghost Rider, Gore, and Khonshu, and then bring that back, and we should have a reasonable other chance of winning the game, just because things like Scorn get so big, Iron Man's a good card, blinking into Gore, etc., are all powerful plays. Gambit at the end of the game, so on and so forth. There are a lot of ways to win and put up a lot of power with this list. We're trying to use Khonshu, like when we use Khonshu, we can use it to high roll with Gore, Iron Man, right? But we're not sad to just use it as like bigger Doctor Doom at the end of the game. Um, like if it gets discarded once, it's putting up similar power to Doom. You just have to be willing to fill a location before then to know where it's going to go, and that's pretty damn good, especially if you manage to play Iron Man, right? So this deck does take advantage of that, and I think it's really good and worth playing. We're starting to see more and more successful Khonshu decks. We'll let you know as we get there when we cover that deck. We're going to do a weekend review tomorrow, and unless something changes later today, uh, my advice for Khonshu is going to be to wait on it for now. I think this card is good, not great, and I don't think that's necessarily worth going out of your way for. With the big old caveat that I think that we are getting to better decks with it now as the weekend missions are almost upon us. Then we have the day one Cougar list. Cougar has this different list that he hit infinite with this season. That was this season. The very beginning of this season. He's currently ranked 5. He played this very, very, very cool Black Knight Ghost Rider deck with Isan and Agamotto and Hulkling. It's such a cool deck to do so. It's easy to fit Khonshu into this deck for Hulkling, by the way, because the Khonshu will be brought in by Isan, which is very cool and not something I remotely expected, but it does work that way, where the discarded Khonshu can end up being pulled by Isan, which is huge. So should you be so inclined, feel free to do that. Feel free to try that. Outside of that, this list is cool, and Ghost Rider being better in it is good because this isn't running Infinite, right? Like a lot of these Black Knight Ghost Rider decks run Infinite, and if you're pulling Infinite with Ghost Rider, it doesn't really matter. You're winning that lane by too much for it to really affect anything. But when you're discarding an Isan or Agamotto, having 15 power versus 14 power at the end of the game is a major difference. Like it's a real thing. And I think this is a meaningful change here. I really, really like this kind of deck, and I'm very happy when it's in the meta. That's it. That's our OTA. I am Med. Please tune in tonight to the podcast for further discussion with our wonderful guests. Check out patreon.com/snapjudgments if you're interested in supporting the channel further. I got to say thank you to a certain support of Patreon at the end of every video. So thank you to Absolute Shannon, Abigail Kiesland, Mandatory Burnout, Irregardless, LAB, Inc., I Am Frostman, Hota Navidete, Thinking Poker, Primed Ryan, Ryan Burke, and Ryan Wood, Heretics League, Koi Ray, Kazushi, Archangel 3K, Black Dahlia, Barafrost, The Goat Seeker, Allowed, Nightmare, Only Fox, Synth, Nerd, Dirty Casual, Mr. Kerfuffle, Cables, Jinja Prime, Philip Brakovich, Haplo, Kenny Loggins of the Danger Zone, The Bizza, Black Jeebus 23, Extra C and Skippy G, Jessica Gamble, Slush Death, King of Bros, Great Kazoo, Werewolf, Kevsey Hoda, Luna, Chris, Clam, Colonel Forbin, Bricks to Click, Rob Silverman, M. Holland, David G. Wingfield, Stephen, Brian Coffin, Tristan H. Martin, Jason B. Mr. Craig Sterry, Matt V. Ron Wrench, Corbin, John Q, and Jimmy McHugh, Yes Stout, 8th Sage, One Big Man, Milkman for Rees, Cactus, Jack BG, Quid Pro Joe, Snap to Scissor Joe, Mott, Supreme, Models, Green Goblin, Unibot, Flan 56, The Fuzzy Lump, Spectrum Mix, Hoot, Aku, Laris, what's up, Aku? Matt H, DJ, Mikey Hijinks, No Frickin' Flex, Nick, the Greek Geek, Zodrex, the King of Canada, Denman Falcon, Fothor Newman, Jonesy, Two Ties, the Written Lord as the Pirate King Tucker, and of course, Gunny T, where the T stands for. Tomorrow, we've got our biggest video of the week. Make sure you're subbed for it. We're streaming tonight to get that podcast done, and we have something extra special for you tomorrow afternoon. Don't miss out, and we'll see you then. Peace.